Hi, everybody. It's April 29th, 2025, and we just concluded the election, the Canadian election, federal election yesterday. I've been posting these videos as a form of therapy to recover from the trauma of losing my little brother, Paul Cairns, 64 with Down syndrome, who was locked up by the British Columbia New Democratic Party government for 588 days before he died alone among strangers at Burnaby Hospital. So Paul died a little over a year ago, and he died 5 days before his 66th birthday. And he was my last surviving family member in Greater Vancouver, and I was his last surviving family member and visitors. So he was locked up in a group home run by L'Arche, L''ARCHE. And I was just in shock and trauma after losing him in such a horrible way, with my own government locking him away after I discovered they'd created a secret power of attorney to give him the COVID-19 shot, and I reported the group home to the police. And after I did that, virtually the same day, the group home, which is paid by the BC New Democratic Party government, terminated permanently Paul's visits with me and my visits with him. It was just his little bit of normalcy. I had an agreement with the government that I could visit Paul once a week at his group home, and he could spend every Saturday afternoon at my home. So I was stunned and shocked after Paul died. They say he had a stroke. I believe that they did medical assistance in dying on him because his oxygen mask was removed after they found out that the police had reopened the investigation into the fraudulent and forged power of attorney. So they removed his oxygen mask and sedated him to death. He didn't need to be sedated at all. He had had some kind of brain incident, some kind of brain bleed, and he wasn't in pain. He was struggling to recover. Paul wanted to live so badly. And I just felt so helpless because, unfortunately or fortunately, I was trained as a lawyer. I was the first single mother in history to graduate from law school in British Columbia. So I knew how unlawful and cruel, sadistic their treatment of Paul was, and how much against the wishes of my parents, who struggled to give him as a normal life as possible. So I just had a couple of observations about the election yesterday. First of all, I want to thank my candidate, Conservative Party of Canada candidate Paul Lambert, who was an exemplary person, let alone candidate, and would have made a wonderful member of Parliament. He reached out to me and was very human, and I threw 150% of my support behind him. I just couldn't believe what I was able to do. At my last count, I think I had knocked on over 600 doors. I had walked more than 10,000 steps a day. So that's about 7 kilometers every single day, knocking on doors and trying to get out the vote. But a couple of thoughts that stay with me is that the backbone of the Conservative Party campaign was young men, like very young men, like in their early 20s, and grandmas like me. For the most part. There was every demographic, but that was for the most part. And I believe it's because young men see that there is no future with this liberal, left-leaning, woke culture of that three-party carnage, that carpetbagger from the World Economic Forum. He offers And the boomers think, I know that the boomers supported him because they thought, they want to preserve the equity in their home and the high value, and the fewer homes there are, the higher value their homes will be. But they didn't pay attention to the news. And the first thing that 3-passport grifter is going to do, he's going to tax the equity in people's homes in their primary residence. And their laws are already on the books to conduct medical assistance in dying on incapable adults. But what stands out to me is a conversation that I had when I was doing the door knocking on election day in the last hours. And I spoke with this man in a beautiful home on Burrard Inlet. It was like a Malibu mansion, but it was very nice. I spoke with this very nice man who said he was 76, and he said that in his business dealings, he deals with World Economic Forum types like billionaires from Davos all the time. And he asked, this man I spoke to was a dual citizen. And he said he asked these Davos business colleagues of his, these billionaires, what did they think of Mark Carney? And he said, they all said he was a grifter, a self-serving grifter, that everything he did was to advance his own interests. He's never been in public service. He knows nothing about public service. And in the conversation that I had with my candidate, Paul Lambert, he said something to the effect of, thank you for focusing on the true meaning of being a member of Parliament, which is service. It's public service. Members of Parliament are servants. Mark Carney will never be a servant of anyone. He's never been in public service, and he will never be a public servant. He will use the Canadian system to advance his own net zero agenda and further destroy Canada's economy and freedom. The Emergencies Act that shut down our civil rights during the COVID-19 crisis was his idea. That Trudeau did all this, and he thinks that invoking the Emergencies Act was a wonderful idea. He's a truly evil man, and when I nicknamed him 3-passport carnage, I had no idea how prescient I was. He actually has 32 different citizenships, 27 with the Economic Union through his Irish passport, 4 with his United Kingdom passport, and then Canada. My mother used to call his type, he's Irish, like me. He's of Irish descent. And my mother used to call Mark Carney types lace curtain Irish, which was the worst epithet she could use for anyone. That's a person who's of Irish descent, but they look down their nose, whether they're wealthy or not, they look down their nose at the average person. And Mark Carney is lace curtain Irish to the nth degree. The other thing that I noticed about this election from knocking on doors is I wish I had a nickel for every time a voter said to me, oh, I was going to vote for the Conservatives. I like the Conservatives. But then they put Mark Carney in, and I had to vote for him. We don't know him. He hasn't been elected dog catcher in Canada. And the Liberal process to make him leader of the party was contrived and undemocratic. Finally, I just want to say what a pleasure it was to work with the Conservative Riding Association of Port Moody Coquitlam to meet all these wonderful people of every ethnic background, every age, every employment status. It was the most uplifting experience and the most fun of my life. And I would just want to thank Paul Lambert and his team for letting me contribute. And Conservative parties of Canada has only begun to fight. We will restore Canada to its former glory. Oh, actually, I did want to add one thing, is that I have concerns about the electoral process. I believe that the British Columbia election on October 19th of 2024 was stolen from us by computer wizardry, that it was the first election in history that was not counted by hand and was done by scanning of ballots. Now, this election yesterday, I went and I spent 4 hours as a scrutineer in a polling station, but I could only scrutinize one of the 4 polls. I could only sit at one table and actually look at the vote counting of one of the 4 polls. And when I first started out as an election scrutineer, you would sit in the voting place all day and you'd watch everybody vote. And there'd be a member of the campaign team at every table. There was 4 tables. I could only sit at one and actually look at the marks on the ballots at one table. And it's my concern, and I don't really have an answer yet, but a huge amount of the voting was done in the advance polls between I believe it was between October 18th and October 22nd. And to my knowledge, there was no scrutineers at all of all of those votes. I mean, maybe there was, but I'm not aware of it. So I tried to explain we had our volunteer team leader was a 17-year-old young man who was brilliant, but I tried to explain to him how precious the physical vote counting process, the actual nuts and bolts of counting every ballot, how incredibly fragile it is and important to our democracy that it be done in a way that each vote is treated as a sacred statement. You get one statement, and all it is an X on a ballot once every 4 years. And that statement should be treated as the precious right that it is, that's been paid for in blood by soldiers over the past centuries. Anyways, those are my thoughts for now. I feel so much better having thrown myself into all this election campaigning and working basically to restore the rights of my little brother Paul Cairns and to ensure that the mistreatment that he received at the hands of the New Democratic Party government and the his New Democratic Member of Parliament, Jagmeet Singh, and my Member of Parliament, Bonita Zarrillo, both of whom lost last night, will never happen again. Take care, everybody. I love you all.